Hey, we're back. Welcome to the show, Total Financial Solutions, Safer Money Hour. Okay, we're talking about your family's finances, really what it's going to take to start up your own business. A lot of people have this idea that starting a business begins with an idea, and I believe that's the case, but there are a series of questions, I think, and some maybe personal tests that kind of go into that. And we cover that in the first part of this program. It goes really beyond and supersedes, the dollar amount, the time amount that's going to be invested into starting a small business. The ideas are fantastic, but I would say there's a big part of this that is really you. It's based on and designed around you, your aptitude, capabilities, your expertise, your education, your ongoing education of an industry. There are a lot of questions, I think, as we've covered in this first part of the program, that have to be answered. A lot of questions must be answered before you even can open up the next part of the conversation, which is starting up a business. And I think a big part of the next step is really analyzing, you've analyzed yourself, but now you've got to analyze the industry in which you're taking your business into.
A lot of people have a passion about things that have gone by the wayside. Jeff, you mentioned it, typewriter repair. There are passions of industries that are beautiful. Graphic artists, amazing graphic artists. Today, it can be done how easily, right? Anybody with a computer that's a $400 computer, my goodness,
sure,
can have some level of graphic artist design that may be acceptable enough. It may not be perfect, it may not be the best, certainly, but it's acceptable enough for most people to say, I'm not going to hire a graphic artist. Now, if you spent your whole life going to school and that's what you did and you were great at it, that skill set is so out of range than the industry required today to even exist that you might as well not even have it. It's just, you're so good at something that nobody needs anymore. So how do you create this ability to analyze an industry? Well, in my opinion, you have to first look down the road of people that are doing it already. See if their business is growing each and every year or declining each and every year. Where you can see this is in Wall Street. All of the industry experts in Wall Street, all the businesses that do these big businesses, they have to report their earnings. They have to report their sales. So you can go to a company, for example, if you want to start a toy store, you can go to Toys R Us, take a look and see what is happening with their sales. You can look at Walmart, what's happening with their toy sales. The moment Walmart started selling toys, Toys R Us began to have ups and downs in their toy sales, right? The moment you could buy things online, all of the called brick and mortar retailers started suffering in sales. So they had to switch and they had to have an online store division where they would sell things often for less money than they did at the store. So you've got to look and see what is happening with the trend. And if it's on the macro scale, which means the large scale, you could actually go out, pull that data from reporting industries, off of Wall Street. You can go off the internet, Yahoo Finance, Google has a finance division. You can pull this data and then analyze. Are more people going to these publicly traded day spas, right? There's some big ones out there. Or are more people buying stuff online and having the in-home spa treatment? So you can get an idea of what's going. Should I open up a business that looks like that? Now, I don't know. Any comments on that, Jeff?
Well, I was going to say that there are so many resources out there because some people are probably listening to this going, gosh, I can barely spell analyze, much less actually do the word, perform the verb, analyzing an industry. Gosh, there's so many layers that I haven't peeled back yet. How do I find all that data? There are some wonderful resources, especially here in town, but I know they exist just about everywhere and virtually as well, where you can have these industries analyzed by business experts, people that have businesses that are employed by, for instance, the Small Business Development Center. You might be able to go and have this entire venture that you're going to undertake here, from your marketing plan, your business plan, soup to nuts, the analysis of your industry that you're going into. Those are all parts of this, and it might seem really daunting to go and take this on by yourself, and it is. Trust me, I believe in when I say it is. But when you have the resources and you employ them, some of this stuff kind of demystifies itself with their help, and you can now see if you're going into something that might be a dead end, or there's too much competition, or you might not even live in an area that supports what you're trying to do as a business.
And remember this, in the business cycle, there's actually a business cycle, meaning there's expansion, there's basically a maturity of the business cycle, and then there's a retraction. And as that retraction begins, and then there's a recession, that begins the recession, then we get down to the depths. If we go too deep, then it's going to be called a depression. And then we have the growth and the expansion all over again. During that 4-stage cycle, at what phase does it make sense to have a startup business? Remember, people don't stop eating out when we have a recession. They just go from filet mignon and $50 bottles of wine to pizza and beer. You're still eating out. So if you want to start a restaurant business and you're in the filet mignon and the fancy wine and we're getting ready to enter into a recession and start going down into that depression, and you have not established yourself as a fine steakhouse yet, it may be difficult for you to survive that downturn when people retract their spending. Okay, so that's a good example. But here's another place I want you to go. Every company, I don't care who you are, has a supplier. And that supplier gives the basic building blocks to every business. Cups, napkins, steak, right? I remember we were looking at a big event at a particular business, at a restaurant, and I found out that the suppliers had not been paid for quite some time. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? They said, well, my brother-in-law sells the produce to that place, and they're behind like 60 days on paying for their produce. Well, realize produce doesn't sit on the shelf. It's not as like, well, we just haven't sold it yet. No. They sold it, received the money for it, and spent it somewhere else. That means they're mismanaging their money. So if I want to plan an event 2 months out and I have to give a deposit, chances are pretty good I'm not going to see that deposit. And you know what? That restaurant did go out of business. And we would have lost our deposit and sat there trying to find out, when they're going to pick it up. So you can check suppliers. They know what's going on. They know if a business or an industry is having a bad day or a bad month. They can track that a little bit. Go ahead, Jeff.
No, I was going to just chime in on that. Just that is one of the indicators, and it just goes back to looking at the surface of a business. You may not be able to tell if there are any rifts underneath. They might be like the duck. They look cool and calm on top, but they're paddling like heck underneath. So some of those underlying indicators I think are important. So I'm glad you brought up the supplier side of things.
Next, I want you to check with past employees. Usually, if an employee is a past employee, there's a reason. It could be they've got a better opportunity, they made more money, they were fired. There's all sorts of reasons why a current employee or a past employee is a past employee. Ask them questions. If they say things like, oh, my manager was mean, there's a lot of it is personality. But when you start to get down to the reason is because they stopped paying me my paycheck for 3 months, and then I finally got paid again, or they were supposed to give me a bonus and they lied, and then they took back this. You might say, you know what, there's a challenge here that's happening that I see as a trend with the industry or this particular business, and it gives you like just a little place to investigate that might see there's more to it or there's not more to it. So there's pieces like that. How about this, Jeff? One of the things that we worry about when we have a business is what if you get sued? My gosh, I need to make this business legal. I don't want to get sued and lose my home or my child's college fund. So there's a way to make your business legal.
Well, there is, and I think this is probably one of the first places people will go when it comes to planning out a business plan, is they'll think, oh, I need to incorporate. I need to have an entity. I need to have a legal business structure. Well, certainly that, I think, can be grown into, and if that's where you would like to start out, just know that there's a fee involved in that, and there's a legal side to it. You should have an attorney probably involved at the very least, someone that is knowledgeable in that field where they can help guide you through some of that. Because what do people normally do? They just say, oh, I'll figure it out. They go online, they pay a nominal small fee, and all of a sudden they've got a corporate structure, and then they start their business from there. So that might be okay, but when it comes to a business growing into its expenses and into its industry and its market, there are insurances out there that can really protect you from a lot of the perils out there or the potential threats when it comes to being sued or having any type of litigation. So you can kind of go both ways, but I would say that insurance is probably always going to be a necessity. At least that's my opinion on that. And then if you have the corporate structure kind of be that umbrella over that, and your insurance is underlying, that combination there can be a pretty good soundproof plan when it comes to thwarting off any liabilities.
Remember this. Look, the concept of having your electrician also build your deck or your plumber fix your air conditioning. You would see those as distinct different things.
Sure.
I would encourage you to explore the idea of not having your CPA form your corporation, but instead have an attorney. And I wouldn't want your attorney to do your books, send in your tax return. You'd think that's silly. So be very careful if you have your CPA also doing your corporate structure. Anybody can do it. I can do it for you. We don't, but anybody can. You go online.
There's a reason we don't do that.
Yeah, look. If anybody who is not a lawyer is going to do this, then that means they probably are going to use the exact same service that you would, or pretty darn close, which would you go in, you fill in the blanks, and instead of paying the $300 or $400 or $500 to have your own corp, you would pay them $1,000, and that person keeps the $500 for, the hour of their time. If you have an attorney do it, then that $500 is well spent because they are protecting you, and if not, they are malpractice. So in my opinion, you can do it yourself. Some people do. If you want the best protection, I always go through an attorney to do attorney work, CPA to do CPA work, a plumber to do plumbing, etc. The idea is to have experts in their field. Now, again, like Jeff was saying at the beginning, you may not need an S Corp or an LLC or a C Corp. You may not need any of that. You can start it yourself. But be very careful of when that line comes where we're now making enough money or the liability, right? If you go to an attorney and you say, I want to start a company, the attorney's glasses that they use to see everything through is liability, lawsuits. If you go and you say to a CPA, I want to start a corporation, the only thing that they see is tax savings. And if they don't see the solution of that to be solved because of that entity, then they'll say, you don't need it. You don't pay that much in taxes, but maybe you have enormous liability. Or if you don't have you're not making baby cribs. Hey, it's no big deal. Don't worry about it. There's no liability here. You're selling stuff. If people don't like it, give them their money back. But maybe you have enormous tax problems. So the attorney would say, you don't need a corporation. The CPA would say, oh my goodness, yes, you do. So you get the advice, take it for what it's worth, from whom it's worth, right? Your Uncle Lenny probably is not going to be the best one to give you advice on whether or not you should, buy a Camaro or a Mustang. We all know Camaros are probably a little better. Sorry, Jeff.
That was your outside voice.
I just made that up because I knew you were a Mustang guy.
Unsubstantiated, but okay.
So, you want to speak to the experts in order to get the expert opinion. All right. When we say start the planning process, what does that mean? There's a plan there's a plan to plan, and that plan to plan is what we've been talking about. Is there even a business to start? Is this just a hobby? Am I really going to make money? It's nice that I have all the write-offs, but the IRS doesn't let you write off hobbies. This has to be a real business. You have to be in the business of making money. And wouldn't that be great if you earned an extra 100 or 200 or 300,000 a year? That'd be amazing. That's what the small business is all about.
Well, the plan, I think, is the biggest part because it can now be kind of your barometer, so to speak. It can be your checklist. You can go back and actually have a record of what worked. There's probably nothing more dangerous than a business to get through its first fiscal year or even calendar year and say, hey, our doors are still open. I guess we can be in business another year. Well, how do you know that?
Right.
How do you know what worked? Do you have a stockpile of money because you were really profitable in a certain area, or are you going into debt each and every month because you're letting dollars fly out the window? You didn't realize we're doing that because you're overpaying a certain supplier or a certain product to make your company run. So there's so many little layers and little pieces to that. If you go back now and you record these things, it's not your corporate minutes. It's not your attorney's job to do this. It's not your bookkeeper's job. This is your your job to go back in and say, these are the benchmarks that I need to set for myself. And there are some components to the business plan. I don't know if you want to talk about those, Arif, but I think they're kind of important to at least mention a couple of them, because they're the integral parts of what's going to help keep you healthy as a business.
And I think this is important. We have about 7 or 9 different pieces here that we want to get into at the second hour, because I think the pieces of the business plan really help you decide if this is if you're going to take the next step. Every single business in the world, I don't care what business it is, whether it's a network marketing business or whether it's a full-fledged, McDonald's franchise, I don't care. You need to have a business plan. A lot of the franchises, the reason they charge you big money is because they have gone through the business plan. They have already done a market survey. They have gone to your community. When Chick-fil-A came here to the Santa Clarita Valley, they came and they looked at 2 things. They looked at the existing population and they looked at the growth. And then they looked at the demographics. They say, where we have been successful before have been people that have looked like this many moms and dads, this many kids, this many single people, this many young college students in this age, and they said, we have had success. So I'm sharing this with you because they were friends of ours that opened the store out here, and he knew everything about this community. In his 20s, the man was in his late 20s.
Before he even visited the city, am I correct?
That's right. He looked at all the statistics, and he had opened up and ran multiple stores for Chick-fil-A. You guys know the story if you're familiar with it. Remember the lines of people standing in line trying to figure out, on day one. So all of this to share with you is that there is a process to go through to even decide if the community is right for your business, if the population. Now, there are many, many businesses, dozens, that have been started off of a feeling and have succeeded off of a feeling. I am not questioning that. Some of you might be going, we didn't ever do that. I just looked around and said, somebody ought to open up an ice cream store and son of a gun, and we have an ice cream franchise all over the place. Wonderful.
I think that's called luck, is it not?
It's the same. I think of it this way. Sometimes I drive home late at night, and I've driven on the freeways. And I can imagine if I could pick the time of night that I could close my eyes and run from one side across the freeway to the other and not get hit by a car, and you might say, that's a great idea. Who would pick that? He didn't get hit by a car. That must have been a great idea. How about that's a dumb idea and a lucky guy? Maybe not that smart, but a lucky guy. You might say, well, Arif, that's not a good example. Look, just because somebody's been successful at something doesn't mean we should do it or we should do it the same way. So you need to see, in my opinion, the patterns. When I have lost my money, when I have invested and lost, when I have been taken in scams, if you will, is when I have not understood what I was doing and I trusted the wrong people. Now, I know that's hard for you to say, well, then how do you know to trust the right people? Who are the right people? Well, you've lived on this earth long enough. You've got that gut feeling. Women, you guys call it women's intuition. Guys, we call it that gut feeling. We know what that is. We know when something doesn't seem right. So be very careful when you walk down that road. The business plan, the standard business plan, when we get to it, I want to go into those details a little bit. But remember this, the planning process has multiple pieces. It has a business plan, we'll get to in a minute. But it also has a strategic plan and a marketing plan. We're not going to get into the last 2 today, but understand a strategic plan allows you to see how you're going to implement the things that work. Like, I am the best chiropractor in the world. I think, Dr. Pilecki is, I don't know about a lifesaver, but I'd put him pretty darn close to that. I think he's really good at what he does. I think he understands the system of the human body. Now, can there be 50 Dr. Pileckis around town? Probably not, right? There's one human being. So he has to run his business different than a McDonald's franchise. So you're going to go in and you're going to get the best service. You're going to be treated and you're going to be healthy. The planning that somebody does when they're that kind of a business versus a flower store versus a total financial solutions versus a fast food restaurant, right? All of us are a little different. But you have a gut instinct when you open a business. You know that if you know something, but I want more than that. Right? When I knew that we could do things, and we do things different than any other financial company that I know. And we knew that everybody else said that. So I knew that I had to prove it. So Total Financial Solutions came about because so many people were getting taken in scams, if you will. They couldn't figure out their financial life, and they were buying things that they didn't understand. and in fact were in turn creating a messed up financial life for themselves, and we had to come in and offer more secure with actually guarantees. How did we do that? Well, that's what we do. So you've got to build into your portfolio of life and experiences the right time. So starting a small business, that's the tactical part of things, when you do things, who your competition is, how you're going to take their customers, how you're going to have the customers you have spend more money with you, enjoy the experience, right? Today with Yelp, I can tell you when we travel, I pull up some of the travel websites, I find out if that's a good restaurant or a good hotel. I do. They don't like it if you write something bad on there. The small hotels will certainly send a response, or at least they should.
That's right. And you can also look at other reviews, because if someone's making a review about this restaurant or hotel or any establishment, chances are they've made reviews about other businesses. And if you see that there's someone that's always negative, maybe that is just rhetoric and they're just kind of going down that vein. But if they have some good and bad reviews and they say, look, this is the way it is, and they might become, a little bit of a source, if you will, when you're looking into that, you can start to see. And people, the reason I bring that up is because I do that, Arif does that. We start to see if there's any validity to what they're saying. Is there a pattern? Was there one bad review out of 20 or 30 of them? Then it's probably a pretty good place. So a lot of that feedback, people talking about your business, that can help or harm you as well.
Folks, I want you to stay tuned, because we're going to continue after the top of the hour. We're going to get into the business plan of things, and that's important. But to finish up with the marketing plan. In your marketing plan, you need to know how you're going to, how you're going to market to the customer. What's different about your message? Make sure your colors are in line. Make sure your logo works. So that marketing plan is for another day, but focus, folks, when we come back on the business plan. Thanks for listening. I'm Arif Halaby, along with Jeff Gerard. And thanks to our special guest, Colin Paley, at the top of the hour. We'll be back in a few minutes. AM 1220, KHTS.